In the 20th century, a lot of bad things happened all over the world. But one of those events, not only was it super terrifying, but it was very recent. In Central Africa, there is a country called Rwanda. In this country, there are two ethnic groups. The majority of the people are the Hutus, and the minorities are the Tutsis. Because of different European countries, they basically engineered the Hutus and Tutsis to hate each other with a passion. But these two ethnic groups have been living together for a very long time before this happened. But because of the propaganda other powerful countries put there, it created a giant issue. Since the Hutus were the majority, they were being fueled by other people to destroy the Tutsis. And that's exactly what they do. They start killing the Tutsis. To get to know these two ethnic groups, we have to go a little bit behind. A time where Rwanda and Burundi are in the German Empire's hands. Hutus and Tutsis had been living there for a very long time, but to cause division, the Germans made these two feel like they're separated and they're not the same. They would say the Tutsis have a better genetics and we only work with them. The story of the Tutsis having better genetics continues until Belgium takes over Rwanda. You could say Belgium basically continued what Germany was doing, and they continued the lie they were told. Since Belgium didn't want to get confused between the two ethnic groups, they gave them ID cards, which basically stated what type of ethnic groups they are. You could say Belgium was much more radical than the German. They would say not only are the Tutsis smarter, but the Hutus have not evolved properly yet, and they would compare them to chimpanzees. Something like this is basically called engineered racism, and that means they know exactly what they're doing between two ethnic groups, and they do this to cause separation in a certain area. Since the year 1884, when the Germans took over this area and they caused the division between these two ethnic groups, when Belgium took over, the engineered racism took a higher turn, and year after year, the hate between these two was growing. Eventually, in 1962, Rwanda gains independence from Belgium, but they plant a very deadly seed in a place where they always said Tutsis are smarter and we will only work with them. When they gave it independence, they gave the power to the Hutus. When the Hutus took power, the Tutsis were afraid. That is why they escaped the country after the independence. They went to the nearby countries, Burundi, Congo, and Tanzania. Even though most of the Tutsis had escaped Rwanda, but there were still a lot of them left. And since there weren't many of them, it wasn't really causing a problem just yet. Then we get to the end of the 1980s, when the Hutus start to argue with the Tutsis about land ownership, and this is when the fight officially begins. In the year 1990, they officially start a civil war between the Hutus and the Tutsis. This civil war continues for 3 years, and the UN and other countries ask them to please stop this war. They basically call a ceasefire. But after this ceasefire, the hate for each other grew even larger, especially the Hutus against the Tutsis. Because it had been a century since the Germans and the Belgians told them that they're not even human. A ceasefire that seems like it's about to catch on is growing day by day. In the year 1993, anti-Tutsi propaganda began in Rwanda. You have to know that Rwanda is a Christian country and 94% of it is Christian. The Hutus start to spread information that the Tutsis are not Christian and they want to make us slaves like before. We get to the 6th of April 1994. There is so much tension in this country that it seems like it's a room filled with gas and it's just waiting for a match to lit up so it can explode. On this day, an airplane that was carrying the Rwanda and Burundi president is hit with the surface-to-air missile, and obviously the airplane explodes and everybody dies on board. The Hutus put the blame on the Tutsis, but it still wasn't proven who shot the missile towards the president. The Hutus get so angry that the killings start the next day. Some say it was because of other powerful countries, but some others say no, it was the government. They wanted this plane to be shot down so they could manufacture a genocide. You would find Hutus all over the country, and if anybody wanted to pass, they would have to see their identification first. If they were a Tutsi, they were killed on the spot. Of course, anonymous people would give machetes, knives, swords to people so they can kill their neighbors. And they would tell them, any Tutsi you see, kill them. They would tell them, if you kill any Tutsi, their land will be yours. In this country, there was a shower of blood. In 100 days, 2 million Tutsis were killed. A lot of Tutsis would refuge to the Christian churches, but since the people in charge of the church didn't want to get in trouble because of the Hutus, they would snitch on them, and the Hutus would come with an army and kill hundreds of Tutsis at a time. During this 100 days, the Rwanda radio is singing all day, and they don't call the Tutsis Tutsis anymore, they call them cockroaches. The propaganda that was created by the radio caused normal people to carry a machete and kill their own neighbors. A lot of people talk about evil things the Nazis did, but when this genocide was taking place in modern day, not only did the UN do nothing about it, but no countries said anything. It seems like everybody wanted this genocide to happen. Just like we said, the genocide continued for 100 days, and eventually the UN was forced to send 5,000 troops to Rwanda so they can stop the killings. General Romeo Dallaire, which was a Canadian general, was working at the UN at that time, said in 2014 that the UN knew what was happening since day one, and they could have stopped it from there. But they sent us after such a long time that the killing was pretty much stopped by other people. Either way, it was at a point when the UN couldn't do much about it. The people that actually could stop the genocide was the units that were created by Tutsi people. They basically created a militia without anybody's help but the Tutsis themselves and stopped the killing. And it's good to know that after this, they took power of the government as well, and they're in power to this day. Right now, the Tutsis have power in Rwanda, but the majority, about 84%, are still Hutus. Even though the Tutsis have power, they're still afraid of the Hutus because it still hasn't been 30 years since their wife and kids, their parents, were murdered. After 30 years, the people in charge of this country basically turned it into the most advanced country in Africa today. And you could say they're doing a pretty good job, and they're doing much better than before. But to this day, you could say there is fear between these two ethnic groups. This story actually teaches everybody a lesson, especially for people that have lived along one another for thousands of years, but now they want to separate them, and they create ethnic groups to do that. Like in the Middle East, you see a lot of ethnic groups fighting with one another, and you can't let them create a wall between us.